get started, thank you all for attending our first virtual First Friday of 2020. I think we're going to probably be hosting more of these as we move forward. But this morning, we just have a really, I believe, a timely topic. We've got some folks that are here from the Refuge Center for Counseling here in Franklin that are going to be talking about stress and anxiety, which I know that many of us have been experiencing that ourselves or with our families or with people that we really love and care about. And so I want to introduce our panel today and just really kick it off. Please know that there's a Q&A section. If you have a question throughout this morning's First Friday, feel free to put that in the Q&A section, and I'll do my best to integrate that into our panel with our speakers today. So with that, I'd like to get started. I want to introduce our panel who will be talking today and also providing some future resources that are available for all of you. They've got another virtual event coming up in April that they'll invite you to, as well as if you're just wanting to talk to someone further about what you're experiencing or someone in your family is experiencing, they'll give you information for that as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce, we've got Dr. Weston Crafton, we have Lauren Milliken, and we have Pike Williams, who will be our featured speakers today. And I just like to just kind of kick it off to you all. First of all, again, thank you for being here. Thank for our first virtual First Friday, and thank you for what you all do to serve the people of Middle Tennessee. So I'll kick it off to you.
Okay, well, I'll start. Thank you very much, Brian, and to everyone here this morning. I guess we're all getting more and more used to Zoom or some other variation of this. So I really appreciate you joining us this morning. And we'll talk a little bit more later, perhaps, as we think about ways to cope with stress, but the importance of structure and schedule and doing the things that we've always done when things are feeling a little bit unhinged. So just appreciate you all being here. I'm going to just start. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit and then tell you, for those of you who may not be familiar with the Refuge Center, I'm going to give you a real brief background on us. And then I'll talk for just a minute, and I'm just going to informally hand it over to you, Weston, and you, Lauren, to share things you guys would like to share that would be relevant to the topic as we've talked. So we'll just sort of in a conversational way between the three of us. And Brian, you just interject at any point with questions, okay? That'd be great. So just briefly, the Refuge Center for Counseling was founded in 2005. Two women, Amy Alexander, who's currently the executive director, and Jen Gillette, who is currently still on the board, founded the Refuge Center, really based on a mission statement of wanting to provide excellent and affordable professional counseling services in order to educate, empower, and support individuals and families in need. That idea of excellent and affordable, those two words always go together. And but they looked around the community, of course, Williamson being just so well resourced, but they noticed, and you don't have to look forward to see this if you're looking for it, but they noticed that not everyone had access, or the access that they did have to professional counseling wasn't all that great. And so they wanted to provide something different. So they embarked on this mission. They found an opportunity to launch this with the help of a really great board of directors, and have continued on as a nonprofit now for 15 years. And, growth has been tremendous. The Refuge Center grew 1,000% in the first 5 years and has continued to grow double-digit levels every year since then. So in this year just ended, the Refuge Center saw 3,700 clients and over 27,000 counseling sessions. One of the things that we love is that we do serve primarily Williamson County, but also surrounding 16 other counties as well. People come from kind of far and wide here in Tennessee to come see us at the Refuge Center. And we do offer a sliding fee scale. This is maybe the last point I want to make here, just so you know. a sliding fee scale. Our normal fee is $125 per session, and we go as, I'm sorry, $120 per session, and we go as low as $25 per session. And that's based on income, and we do verify income based on what people tell us. And so we're glad to be able to provide that, but we can only do that with, of course, generous support from our community, from donors, through grants, and through fundraising. We have a couple of big fundraising events each year. So that's just a little bit about us. Let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to tell you right off. I think that's it. I would extend an invitation to you to come visit us anytime when we get through COVID. We will resume our weekly connections lunches every Tuesday except one. We offer a free lunch there at the Refuge Center for you to come by, spend an hour with us. We'll take you through the place and show you around. So we just extend that to all of you. So I am one of the staff therapists there at the Refuge Center, or here at the Refuge Center, and I have been there since 2013. I also support a group of our therapists there called our Postmasters Volunteer Therapists. And this is a second career for me, and I really love being at the Refuge Center. And for all kinds of reasons, I have maintained a private practice in the community as well. But it's great to be in an organization where you can feel connected, which is so important to all of us right now. And we're all experiencing that. So I think Weston and Lauren, I'm going to just open up with a little bit of sort of the physiology around what happens when we feel anxious. And I'm just going to, Weston and Lauren, I'll let you guys chime in here with this. And then you guys can just speak to some different aspects of anxiety and stress as we go. So just briefly, when we feel anxious, what's happening? What happens in our bodies physiologically? First thing maybe that's worth noting is anxiety is often connected directly to fear. So it is a fear response. We're afraid that something is happening or it has happened, and it could be a future fear that really hasn't happened, but we're afraid it's going to happen, or it could be something that's happening in real time, but we're anxious. So when we say the word anxiety, it's that feeling we get when we're afraid. And so it is a response to fear. Well, what happens in our bodies? So it's kind of fascinating when people start describing their response and what we know about the physiological response. Some of you may know this, but there is an autonomic part of our nervous system, meaning it's involuntary. And so when we are triggered or activated, something happens in our bodies, and it kind of goes like this. We begin to feel a sense that there's something physically uncomfortable in our bodies. Before that even happens, though, it's called our sympathetic system gets activated. It's kind of a crazy word. I'm not sure how it describes this, but essentially we would know it as our adrenals kick in. A couple of hormones get released into our body when we are threatened in any way. It could be physical threat or an emotional threat. And these hormones are epinephrine and norepinephrine, and they activate our adrenal system. We're all familiar with our adrenaline. And when it comes on, the blood flow in our body shifts significantly away from the frontal lobe of our brain, which is where we do our best thinking. It's where we're logical and rational and reasoning, and we can make sense of things. But the blood flow shifts from that to the other parts of our brain, which is primarily the part of our brain that is hypervigilant. Okay, it's the limbic part of the brain, or where the amygdala resides. And so this is, and we've all felt this before, we have become defensive, we have become reactive, and we're just ready to do what? Fight or flight. And so this is the space we find ourselves in. That's the sympathetic system. It's there to protect us. And so when we feel that, there's nothing wrong with us. Our body's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And of course, the blood flow also shifts to our muscles to enable us to fight or flight as needed. So that's the sympathetic system. It is sort of a polarized or opposite system to the parasympathetic system, which we would simply call the rest and digest system. And so this is what's happening. And so if we have bad news for employees, or if we are experiencing bad news ourselves, this is what's happening in our body. There is a shift from our frontal lobe in our brain to where everything's okay. I'm doing fine. I feel regulated. I feel safe. Something is happening where I am moving into my sympathetic system. The adrenals are coming on. I'm starting to feel nervous. I'm starting to feel anxious. And I am in a fight or flight mode. And I'm not really listening well at this point because I'm just waiting for a way to escape even. So we've all felt that, but that is normal part of responding to anxious situations. Okay. So let me just pause there, and Weston, you or Lauren, feel free to add anything to that, and anything else you guys would want to say about anxiety and stress. And then we can just a little bit, we'll shift to what do we do about it, which is probably what we're all thinking right now. And what are the things we can do to help mitigate that? But can I just throw it over maybe to you, Weston, first, and then we'll
Sure.
come.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, good morning, everyone. Pike, you're exactly right. I loved how you explained, kind of the way that our brains and our physiological system works. And what I'll say is that the brain, especially the prefrontal cortex, its job is to be that, as you said, Pike, that executive functioning. It's like this, it's the CEO, if you will, of our brain. It's the one that, kind of regulates. It also regulates our emotions. And so what happens when the amygdala, Pike, which you mentioned, which is the part of our brain that's, it's really hypervigilant during this time, it's going to be scanning for threats. That part of our brain hijacks the rest of our brain. So literally our prefrontal cortex goes offline because, our brain is wired to protect us, keep us safe. And so all the resources are going to, as you said, probably going to go to that part of our brain. And what often happens is that we go to catastrophic thinking. We're thinking of worst case scenario, and we're not able to access that prefrontal, which helps us to see that what the likelihood or the probability might be of a situation. And so I think that lends itself to what we're going to talk about later, which is how do you bring the prefrontal cortex back online? I tell my clients that when someone is triggered or flooded is a term we use when your amygdala has hijacked your brain, and you can't help someone by being rational with that individual. You can't, because you're speaking to their prefrontal cortex, which is offline. And so I often tell people we have to speak to the amygdala. We have to name it. There's a phrase that Dr. Dan Siegel uses, he's coined the phrase, to name it is to tame it. So if we can name what we're feeling, name that emotion, then it helps our amygdala to feel, basically for it to be comforted, to know, okay, this is what I'm feeling. This is valid, what I'm feeling, given the circumstances. And so if we can't get our amygdala back online, we can't be rational. And so we're definitely going to talk more about that. This idea also, I want to say that, we kind of think that if we have a thought, it's true. It's just the way we think that our thoughts are the literal truth. And I work with my clients a lot on a thought is just a thought. It's what you do with the thought that then becomes your reality. And so, I try and help people during this time to externalize their thinking, to kind of see it contextually, and to see it as a separate, it's you are you, and you are having, your brain is giving you the thought of whatever that is. And then for you to be able to examine that thought. Now, obviously, if they're flooded, they can't do that. So that's why now we're back to step one, helping you to be able to calm, to regulate, bring your prefrontal back online, and then to really think about, okay, what's the evidence for this thought? Is this thought 50% true? Is it 75% true? And to really kind of go through what's the evidence for the thought, what's the worst that might happen, what's the best that might happen, what is most likely to happen, and then what could I do then? So in this time, we're all experiencing a loss of autonomy. We can't leave our homes. We're feeling powerless, trapped. And so it's easy for us to want to seek out information. Watching the news is probably the worst thing we could do continuously. I think recommending maybe a 10-minute check-in, maybe not a check-in, maybe in the morning, and, limited to minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever. And then that's it. I also tell my clients, schedule a worry break. If you're going to worry, then let's schedule a break for when you're going to do that. You're going to schedule, you're going to give yourself permission to worry as much as you want for 10 minutes a day. and you're going to formulate an action plan. And then at that point, you're going to put the worry away. And if worry comes back up, if a thought comes back up related to worry outside of that window, just make a note of it in your phone, and you're going to worry about that the next time you have that appointment. That's a way to give yourself a structure. So those are some initial thoughts I have. Lauren, I'll turn it over to you for just to keep the conversation going here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both so much for bringing in that perspective. One of the things that I would really like to add to that conversation, especially to how our body processes anxiety, is that the way that I like to explain it to my clients is our body is designed to do this. It does this on purpose. Anxiety is intentional and it is functional, and it lets us know when there's a threat in our environment. And so I like to explain this using an analogy of a bear with my clients. So if there is a bear in our environment, that anxiety sends up a red flag saying, hey, you have to pay attention, watch out, there's a bear here. And so all of that starts kicking in, your heart rate increasing, your breathing gets shallow, preparing you to either run away or fight this bear. What we're finding in this time period is that our threat is not seen like a bear, it is unseen, and it is kind of anywhere. And so what our tendency is to stay up in this anxiety zone and stay in this heightened state of physiological arousal, which taxes our system. So you might be finding, if this is you, you might be finding that you're feeling exhausted, you're feeling fatigued, you're feeling just weary about the world, and you're lacking motivation, and your system's kind of crashing because you're staying up in this anxiety zone for so long. And so that's why it's really important for us to talk about this today and talk about ways to kind of bring your system back down into a state where you can manage your emotions, because it's so hard on your system to be in that anxiety zone all the time, which is something we're so prone to do when we're checking the news all the time and when we're keeping track of, our family and friends who might be sick and our employees who might be sick and things like that. So it's going to be really important as we go along to have that basis of understanding. And I think this would be an appropriate time to kind of transition to talking about a lot of those techniques, Weston and Pike, if you feel like that's appropriate. So
Yep.
one of the things that I would say is, just on a personal level, engaging in more movement is going to be so helpful, because what that does for you is it dispels a lot of that excess energy, and it helps your body process through the emotions and the trauma that's happening for us. So that could look like taking a walk outside. That doesn't have to look like, oh, well, I go to I work out in my living room for an hour. But that can be as much or as little as you're able to, but just increasing that movement and getting your body moving can help bring you back into a state of optimal physiological arousal. Anything you would like to add, Piker Weston? I've got more if you need.
No, that's great. We'll come back to you. That's really good, Lauren. Thank you. I was just going to chime in there. You mentioned emotions, and that is such a great point. For those of you who have received bad news, sad news, someone you love has been affected by this directly, maybe your family, or you maybe have a child who is hearing things and is very scared. Their school is not meeting, what's happening. So the emotions that Lauren mentioned are so important because these are normal. We want to really want to normalize that. I love what you said, Weston, about name it to tame it, letting people speak their emotion. What are you feeling right now? I feel sad, or I feel scared. So important to let them say that. In fact, even to encourage them to say that. So those of you who may meet with employees, give them a space and a time to describe what are they feeling. And you don't have to solve it. This is so important. If you ever made the mistake I've made, which is to try to fix someone's emotion by giving them a solution, please don't make my mistake. Don't do that. Unless they ask for help. If they ask for help, of course. But just giving people a place to say, yes, I'm feeling sad today. I'm feeling scared right now. That'll help them more than anything else just to move through the emotion. And it's wonderful. So I love what you said, Lauren, about that, and Weston. So, but just that right there, getting in touch with your own emotions and getting in touch with the emotions of the people that you work with, people in your family, people that you love, and creating a space and a time to just open that up a little bit without needing to fix it. People are very smart. They're very capable. And like Weston, I think you said, when the prefrontal cortex comes back online, people mostly will figure it out. They will. They just need a space and a time. And time is your friend. People will move through this in time, some faster than others, but they often just need some time. Good. Let me throw it back to either you, Weston, or back to you, Lauren. Let's talk a few more sort of tactics and things, practical things people can do to cope when they notice they're stressed. And let's just float some ideas out here in the hopes that some of these will be very meaningful and helpful to each of you in the audience this morning. So either just jump in there.
Yeah, I think the notion of mirror neurons comes into mind for me, so that we can, Pike, you mentioned, we want to fix it. And that's because when we're hearing someone express their catastrophic thoughts or come from a place of fear and anxiety, we can also become activated. We become triggered ourselves. And then, so I think this idea of, can we be a secure base for others? If an employee is really struggling, or a colleague is really struggling, and they're flooded, can we become a secure base? And how can we? So what I mean by that is, are you able to stay grounded and to validate what they're feeling? I see that you're really anxious, and that makes complete sense to me. Don't tell them it's going to be okay. Don't tell them, we'll get through that. I know we say those things, we'll get through this together, but those are wonderful things to say. But I don't want us to say anything other than, I see you, and it makes sense to me what you're feeling, and how can I help? Right? And because it is the tendency for us to say, we'll get through this together, which we all want to say that. We feel, but what I often tell clients is, we can invalidate people or somehow minimize their experience when we take over and put our spin on it. And so if you can just reflect back, so echoing techniques. I hear what I heard you say is, you're really afraid of your mother or father or a family member. Did I get that right? Yes. Yes, you got that right. Okay. And that makes sense to me, and I'm right here with you, and let me know what you need. And just to kind of give them space. I think mindfulness is going to be extremely important for all of us, which is, we need to monitor the content of our thoughts. That's really where I start, is, what am I thinking? When I wake up in the morning, what is the narrative? What is the story I'm telling myself in this exact moment? And how does that story align with my values and who I really am? This idea of acceptance and commitment is important. So we can't change. There are things we can do. Stay at home is one of them, which we're all doing, right? There are things we can do to flatten this curve. But in the midst of this, if we lose ourselves to the news and the catastrophic thinking and the worst case scenarios that are coming our way, we can lose track of our values and who we really are, and what our personal goal and mission is in our life. So I think, when I'm working with clients, I'm helping them to accept what is and commit to what you can do, commit to your values. What can you do in your home every day that will give you life, that will give you meaning, that will help you regain a sense of autonomy? And so that may be learning something new. That may be giving yourself, practicing mindfulness. Headspace is a really good app that I use for myself. It's available, I've just bought a subscription for myself. So they have really quick, like 3-minute meditations or 5-minute meditations. So I really like that app. But there's free ones I'm sure you can find on YouTube. So those are some ideas I have. What about you all? What are some practical strategies people can use at home that would help them during this time?
Yeah, I really love what you said about not invalidating the emotions of others, and just really being there and witnessing that with them. I would say in this season, it's going to be so important to practice abundant grace and empathy. because what you will likely encounter, especially as an employer checking in with your employees, is a wide gamut of emotional responses, and you probably have already seen some of that. And so just you being that safe base, being able to practice empathy and grace is going to be so important for them to feel heard and seen and safe. And if your employees feel safe, then they'll be better employees. So one of those other things that we can do to help bring kind of that anxious system back down into a place of calm, present-centeredness is just moving our breath. That's going to be a huge thing, especially when the nature of anxiety is that it robs us of our breath. It shortens it, it quickens it. And so taking intentional deep breaths is going to bring back that calm system back online. So that can look like however you need it to look ultimately. But one model is breathing in slowly through your nose, pausing briefly, and then exhaling slowly through your mouth. And having 2 or 3 of those under your belt before you walk into an anxious situation or in the middle of a situation before you respond to it is going to help bring your prefrontal lobe back online, take you out of that midbrain limbic brain, so that you're able to respond the way you want to. You're able to practice that empathy and grace. Yeah. Pike, anything you would like to add?
That's great. Yes, I guess I would just chime in here with that. I was picking up on that idea, the idea of when we breathe and, getting 3, kind of like what you said, Lauren, 3 breaths under your belt. It's real important when we inhale to sort of when we're doing deep breathing, to let our stomach relax. In other words, we could just call this stomach breathing, but what we really mean is we're trying to let our diaphragm relax when we inhale. So this is not chest breathing, maybe like the doctor might want us to do to see if our lungs are clear. This is more inhale with a goal of letting your abdominal area relax. Why? There's a reason, because as the diaphragm relaxes, it literally comes in contact with the vagal nerve, which runs to the brain, and it notifies the brain that everything is okay. In other words, it's a way of sort of reverse engineering the adrenal response and to tell the body that everything is okay. The threat is false, that we're relaxed. You can turn the adrenaline off. So it's a great description, Lauren, and we do want to do the deep breathing for that reason. It will help turn the adrenal response off, as you said, and let us move from back into the prefrontal cortex. That's awesome. I'll just add to that a couple of thoughts. One would be the idea. I was in a meeting recently and some unpleasant news was being delivered, okay? But the leader of the meeting said, I'd like for everyone to take out a pad. This is something we don't always do in our world today. I want you to get a pad and a pen, and I want you to take notes. And really what she was doing is grounding us. So as we heard the news, she was allowing us to connect what we were hearing through our thoughts and a physical movement with our hand to the paper. And it's something that is real important for people when they're hearing news where their fear could be activated, to stay grounded. And so just something like that can be helpful if you're going to have a meeting. Let people have some things and encourage them to stay grounded as you talk. It really encourages them not to run ahead. Like you said, Weston, don't fantasize about what you're hearing. Take the thought captive. Wrestle that thought back and say, hang on, let's just slow things down, and being very intentional about that. I would like to say, for those of you in the audience whose faith is important to them, don't forget that. So each of you would have some beliefs, some verses that are meaningful to you, whether it's, praying when you're anxious, or whether it is remembering, just not to worry, that we have a Father who cares, and just recentering ourselves in our faith for those of you whose spirituality is important, like it is for me. So finding that space, that's a big part of what we can do to care for ourselves. And it's like they say, put your oxygen mask on first so you can help others with their oxygen mask. Self-care is real important as we go through this season. So maybe just a minute more, and then Brian, I don't know if there's any questions out there, but we'll surely want to leave a couple of minutes for questions. But maybe Weston or Lauren, anything else you want to say? And then we'll just, Brian, you can let us know if there's any questions.
And I would only add, I'm thankful for technology in this moment. I think it allows us to see people and stay connected. So scheduling, my wife and I, we got on a FaceTime group session with our family, and it's the importance of connection and relationships during this time, and being able to see each other is so important. So I'm just I'm thankful that we can all do this morning. So that's all I have to add.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think it's so important to be able to connect with others in that way. I would also encourage everyone who's able to also disconnect a little bit, because right now we're spending way more time than normal engaging in the digital realm, and that's really helpful for us for that social connection that we need, but it also is helpful for our brains to disconnect from that digital place and to get analog. So maybe if you journal, write it on an actual piece of paper. Get out in your yard, in your neighborhood, take a walk, plant a garden, whatever it is that you can do to get out and engage in more real and less virtual realities. I would also really highly recommend that engaging in creative aspects, creative endeavors is going to be a huge boon to resiliency and to help stay calm and centered and grounded. Creativity accesses a part of our brain that doesn't need language, and so that lets us really tap in and express a lot of big emotions that we're feeling right now that we might not have words to express. In addition to anxiety, there's a lot of grief in the world that we haven't even touched on, and so engaging in those creative endeavors can be an outlet for you to just really process through and express that anxiety and that grief in this time. And also it just shifts our perspective. It helps us engage in more creative thinking, which helps us in our problem solving and in innovating new methods for problems that we encounter, whether that's in our families, in our businesses, with our employees. Engaging in those creative pursuits are going to be a benefit to you in the long term.
Hey, great, thank you. We have a couple of questions. One, someone is asking, what's the app that Weston referred to?
It's Headspace.
Headspace.
Headspace,
Perfect.
yeah, and it's available. I have an iPhone, so it's just in the App Store. It should be on all the devices, Android. Yeah, it's Headspace. I think there may be a few free meditations on there, and then there's obviously a paywall, and they want you to pay beyond that. So, but what's interesting about it is they've categorized the meditations based on anxiety, stress, depression, even work-related matters. If you're getting ready to go into a meeting, you can do a 3-minute meditation before you go in. So that's why I wanted to mention that. So it's Headspace.
Great, thank you. Here's another question. It says, what's the best way to manage stress in a household? We have a family of 5 with 3 teenagers. We're all getting on each other's nerves a little bit. What's your advice?
Okay, well, yes, so I can, first of all, definitely empathize. We have 3 children, they're adults. 2 of them and a son-in-law are with us. They've come here from New York and London, so our house is full too. So that's a challenge. So let's just say that. So, and I think it's important to, first of all, have a conversation with respect to setting some structure, setting some expectations, acknowledging the fact that this is different for all of us. So having a conversation around that could be over a meal or just huddle the family up. We just need to talk for a few minutes and acknowledge our reality, and also give space for questions. And if you can, just let people ask questions or express their fears. You could have a conversation with, so I'd like to just know what is on everyone's mind, or what do you think you're going to need, and what do you think you're going to need in order to do well during this sort of unstructured, unscripted time. This is new for all of us. And let everybody talk about that. Some people will say, I'm going to need my alone time. Some people are going to say, I need some physical time. Is it okay if I go running? But allowing the family to have a plan and each individual to develop a plan, and then asking everyone to be kind and graceful towards each other. This is a time for maximum grace. We're all adults. We're under the same roof. This is a lot of people under one roof at this time, and maybe we're not used to spending this much time together. Just acknowledge it, and then you can talk about solutions.
It's great. I know we're having a blast just spending every day, all day together with my 2 kids and my wife, and working and teaching. It's certainly been a learning curve for us as well. So another question that we have here is, how can we encourage each other to be polite and caring on social media? So many people are negative and combative, and this will possibly get worse as it goes on longer.
Yeah, I think there are a couple different perspectives one could take on that. Mine is that you have to lead by example in making sure someone else is being kind and supportive. Sometimes we can often be unkind in the process. And so I think, not engaging with that kind of behavior, not encouraging that kind of behavior, not getting into those, Facebook rants or arguments online is going to be really important. I also think just being an advocate for that safe space is going to be probably the most good. We can't control what others do, but we can definitely control what we do. And so responding in kind, saying, this is going to be a space where we respond in kind. And if that's not something that you're wanting to do, we're not going to engage in that behavior with you. And just setting a lot of boundaries around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I also, I love what you said there about leading by example, and, to name it is to tame it, right? And so responding maybe what, I know we're afraid, I know we have a lot of fear, I know we're all anxious, and I know it's easy, anger and defensiveness and resentment and attacking, those are all secondary emotions. And their primary emotion is fear, sadness, loneliness, right? And so helping kind of cut through that, when someone's coming at you and with irritability, and maybe they're really afraid underneath it all, maybe they're sad, maybe they're, so I know this is a public forum, as far as the social media, and so but maybe if you can somehow just keep that in mind as you're reading this, and know that people are hurting, and if you can maybe say, hey, I'm wondering if you're hurting right now. Now, there could be a smart aleck person who just fires right back at you and just doesn't even want to hear it, right? And at that point, to Lauren's, then you set the boundary at that point, and say, I'm really sorry you're hurting. Let me know if I can help you in any way, and set the boundary and not walk away. But if we can help people to name their emotions, that's going to be most important, in my opinion.
And Brian, if I may, building on that, thank you, Wes. That's a great point, and around boundaries, you and Lauren. Identifying who are the people that you need to be with right now is a real important, very healthy thing to do. Who are the safe people, the people that belong, that you want up close and personal? And so when we talk about setting a boundary, we simply mean making choices. Who do you want to spend your time with? It's very hard, and we would probably say you're not going to ever change anyone else, okay, simply stated. So I would encourage you, don't waste a lot of time and energy trying to do that. Rather, try to identify who are the people that you feel like you want to spend your time with and be with them. Sometimes a metaphor of a house helps. If you think of, you've got a personal study, which is sort of that closest, most personal, intimate space in your home, where you don't just let anyone in there. When company comes, you may keep them on the front porch. You may allow them in your living room. If they're friends, you may bring them on into the kitchen. But there's a space where you're going to reserve that's very private and personal, and maybe just your spouse or maybe your very best friend gets to go in there. So put people where they need to be and keep them there, okay? And it's not forever. You can move them. Maybe somebody needs to go to the driveway or the street even. Okay. So that's a normal, healthy skill of being an adult, trying to figure that out. It's good.
Thank you for that. I'm going to move people around today for sure with that metaphor. I like that. So a couple more questions. One is, with the constant updates in the news, sending alerts all over, which remain mostly negative at this time, what would you say is the maximum amount of time that one should spend tuning into that just to protect their own well-being?
Yeah, I would say that's going to be different for every person, and you get to decide your own limits. And so I would base that limit finding on how much can I engage so that I'm informed, but I'm not overwhelmed. And so for some people, that might look like check in every morning, like Weston was saying. For some people, that might look like I check in once a week. So just so I can stay informed, but otherwise I need to abstain so that I can remain centered and present and not overwhelmed with this information. So that's something that you get to experiment with a little bit and find out what works best for you and what's going to be the most healthy for you long term.
There was actually a research study done. Some of you may have seen this. I thought it was fascinating. I retired from Procter & Gamble company, and so part of my retirement, of course, is in the stock market. And so this is definitely something you don't like looking at right now. But the research study definitely said, look at it less. You'll have less stress, and you'll have a better response to the whole thing. So really, there's a vote for more infrequent check-ins on these things. But to follow every up and down, it will drive us nuts. It's just can be overwhelming. So yeah, pick a spot. That's great, Lauren.
Well, it's also going to keep your amygdala activated. If you're constantly getting updates, if you're going to go back into that fight, flight, and freeze perspective, you're going to be more hypervigilant, which is then going to keep you from being more logical, and you're going to have trouble regulating your emotions, which are then going to cause relational problems with people. And so, yeah, I might consider shutting off the notifications on your phone. Maybe even signing up for those, I have some that are just bullet points. It's not even a full article. And maybe not doing that right before you go to bed at night too, because if you're an anxious individual, I know I have to monitor my anxiety. That's just going to get your brain going. You're not going to be able to have a good night's rest when you read that right before you go to, or watch the news right before you go to bed. So I think you pick a time in your schedule that works for you, and you stick to it, and you limit it maybe 5 minutes or less. That's but Lauren has a great point there. You'll know your window of tolerance. You'll know how much you can tolerate before you're flooded. And then also, what's the purpose of reading the news for you? I would have an intentionality behind it and really stick to that. Okay, I got what I needed. I don't need to know anything else beyond that.
Great, thank you. Another question, this is a great one. It says, as a leader of a team, I believe strongly in transparency and authenticity. Any suggestions on staying transparent and authentic in this situation? And how transparent is too transparent? And I know for myself, having employees, we want to make sure that they know what's happening and what's going on. There's a lot of uncertainty. Of course, when you're at home, working at home, and you're by yourself, you kind of tell your own story. So what would you say to that about for those of us that have teams that we lead?
Well, I think it's a great time to practice courageous leadership. And, a lot of studies have been done around leadership. And one I really love and find very helpful, and I think many people have sort of validated this through different research studies, but it's this idea for a leader to be courageous and humble. So the courageous part is what is the truth here, and to tell ourselves the truth. What's happening? What is the truth? It's like, I love what you said, Weston. Let's don't say something's going to be okay if that's not really accurate. Things are not okay. It's okay to not be okay. Today's a bad day. And just to let people say that. Let's don't pretend it's a good day when it's not. That kind of thing. And so courage is the ability to just say, let's speak the truth. Intimacy lives in the truth. And so when we can speak to our employees and our team, look, it's just like if you're in your business, are we on track or not? Are we going to hit our goals or not? What if we don't hit our goals? People need the truth, and they will actually feel safer and more secure, and they'll be willing to take actually more informed risks if they feel safe and secure. And so honesty, which you can only do if you're courageous, and then humility, the ability to admit when you're wrong, goes a long way. So when a leader can stand up and say, you know what, things are not okay at my house. We're not doing everything perfectly. I've stumbled. I've got the scars to show for it. So, but what I've learned is this: people love that, because just be human and be real. And I think people will be drawn to that. We talk a lot as counselors about what's appropriate self-disclosure. We're no different than our clients, really. We've had some education, we have some training, we have some passion for this work, but the bottom line is we're all humans here. And so sometimes sharing some of our story is appropriate, but of course it's not to make it about us. And so I think as a leader, we have to consider what is appropriate self-disclosure. Don't be afraid to share something, but pick your spots. Just use wisdom and discernment about that. Hope that helps a little bit.
That's great. We got a couple more here. It says, can you address coping skills for those that are in the essential workforce that are having to go out and go to the office, dealing with coworkers and handling family who do not have to be home while you're away? Do have to be at home, sorry. So how about for our essential workforce?
Yeah, I would say for those in the essential workforce, especially those who might be in a medical kind of field, you're probably going to be in that anxious response a lot of the time, right? And like we were saying earlier, that being in that elevated anxious response is good, it's functional, and it helps you do your job well, especially if that's something that you need that adrenaline to sustain you. But at the same time, being there all the time is going to fatigue you and wear you down. So for that, I would get really basic and really physical with my self-care. So that looks like moving your body, taking walks, stretching, engaging in that breathing. All of those things are going to remind your system that it's okay to calm down, that you're safe now, that the threat isn't currently present for you. And I think getting really basic with that is going to be the key, because they are realistically in a higher risk position more often.
Mm-hmm. That's good, really good. And sticking with the facts. This is get the facts from the media and then turn it off, kind of like what these guys were saying. And having a few key facts to kind of ground yourselves in. Everyone is not getting the virus. Everyone who is getting it, they're not showing symptoms, some of them, and the ones that are, not everyone is dying. Okay, so we're not minimizing it, but at the same time, we just need to remember that we're not catastrophizing it either. So trying to find a grounded place which is truthful, but not an overreaction or a minimization. Neither one of those is going to be helpful, because to minimize this in the eyes of people and to say, oh, you shouldn't worry about it, that is not helpful, and it's probably just going to make people angry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We got one more question here. It says, can you go a little deeper on what you said about when you say, I hear you and it makes sense what you're feeling, then what do you do? Like, so kind of acknowledging, someone that's with you and what they're feeling. What do you do after that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I hear you. That makes sense to me. How can I help you? How can I support you? And then it's okay. I think it's okay for you to be vulnerable too. And for you to say, I feel whatever you're feeling. But keep it to the emotion words. Don't go into the content. We talk a lot about content, which the content's going to be all the catastrophic thinking and all the possibilities. Keep it to, I'm feeling, I have fear. I have sadness. I'm feeling lonely. So basically you're just sharing your emotions with each other. and you're asking, how can I support you? And I think leave it at that. And maybe they'll say there's nothing you can do. That's okay. I think we have to suspend these ideas of what should happen in this moment or what must happen in this moment, and just be okay with what is in this exact moment. So I hear, and it's a great question, because we have these ideas of what should I do? It's the brain trying to figure out what should I do? What must I do? And sometimes it's just being. Pike, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just throw this out. A metaphor that helps sometimes is the idea of a hula hoop. So basically, stay in your own hula hoop. So if I'm in my hula hoop and I'm reporting to you that I feel sad over here, you don't need to get in my hula hoop and try to solve my sadness. You can observe it from your position. You can say, I see that you're sad. Tell me more about that. What's the saddest part of that for you? How long have you felt this way? And I love what you said, Weston. This is the key question. Is there anything I can do to help? And frequently the person will say, no, there's not. I don't expect that. And in fact, if we try to help, it's going to make matters worse, because it will actually cause people to feel like, you must think I'm incompetent because you're giving me a solution. What, do you not think I can think of that on my own? A classic, we live here in the Bible Belt. So a classic is, don't you know God loves you? Or some sort of overly simplistic, yes, of course I know that. Is it okay if I can be sad anyway? So just staying, just as you said, Weston, I think that's so helpful to people. Don't try to solve it. And for those of us who are problem solvers, and who isn't, if you're in business, you're a parent, this is what we do. So we're really trying to suspend something that we're really good at.
Great. I have one last question, and I want y'all to kind of answer it and wrap up with some further resources as to what's next. But the question is, I'm feeling it's just more of a statement. I'm feeling a ton of anxiety and guilt, telling my employees that they can't come to work, even knowing that they really need paychecks, but I can't pay them if I don't work either. What would you say to that? And also, what are some next steps? Like, what are some good resources? I know we have the Refuge Center has Live Intentionally coming up, but what are some podcasts, books, resources, things that really would be applicable for our audience?
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Lauren or Weston, either one of you share something there?
So you're feeling really guilty, you said, right? That's what the question said. Feeling guilt
Yep.
about coming in, having the employees come into the office. Is that right? Was that the question?
Yeah, I think the question was just, there's a lot of we have employers that are here on the call that are having to either lay people off or not having work for their people. And I know that that's a big concern of our small businesses as well as our large, is just taking care of their people. So, what are some further resources that would help? I love what you said at the beginning, is you said to name it is to tame it. And we talked a lot about the emotions. And I personally have, there's a book that Chip Dodd wrote called Voice of the Heart. And it's really putting, a name to those emotions. And that's been super helpful for me to know what I'm feeling in that moment. But what are some additional resources for you? And maybe talk a little bit about Live Intentionally coming up.
Yeah.
And that's another resource that we've got that anyone can attend for free.
Well, I think you should start first with acknowledging your own feeling of guilt, naming it for yourself, being compassionate towards that part of you that feels guilty. Maybe, asking that part of you, what is it that I need first? So caring for yourself, putting your own oxygen mask on, before you put your other, for someone else. And then I think once you're in a place of secure, you can be a secure base for your employees, I then would lead with your own emotions. I would say, I'm feeling very burdened right now. I'm feeling responsible for you and for your livelihood and for this company. And and then just talk about, I think, name it to tame it for yourself. And then from that point, deliver the facts, and use maybe what Amy Alexander, Pike was talking about. Amy had us write it down. So if you can do a meeting, if you can somehow just help ground people. Resource-wise, Lauren, do you have any books or resources we could provide that might be helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. The first one is, as you mentioned, the Live Intentionally speaker series. So this is an annual event that we do at the Refuge, and this year's topic is living with presence, connection, and intention after trauma. And honestly, I don't know when that could have been more timely. And that is going to be on April 17th, and that's going to be a virtual event. So my understanding is that you will sign up for the event, and the link will be sent via email. So it isn't going to be a live event, but you can watch it at any time, is my understanding of how that's going.
Yeah, that's correct.
But yeah, so that's going to be a wonderful resource. In addition to that, I would say Brene Brown has a new podcast called Unlocking Us, and that just started this past month. So a lot of the content is really geared towards being in this season. I think that would be an incredibly helpful resource. She also has a number of books that are appropriate for this season, engaging courage and vulnerability and shame. So Dare to Lead is her book that's geared towards businesses and teachers. That would be an incredible resource. She also has a book called Daring Greatly about how we engage and how we show up with vulnerability and courage to combat our shame. I would say there are a number of books that we could get into, but a really good resource if you want to learn more about how your body holds onto stress and anxiety is going to be The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, which is a really, really great resource as well. Yeah, Ike, anything you would like to add to that?
Oh, just that I would want you to know that the Refuge Center is open for business. We are an essential services provider. We are doing telehealth sessions right now. As most of you know, the forecast is that the virus is expected to peak here in our area sometime in the next few weeks. So we are really focused on doing telehealth sessions right now with our clients. But you can call us anytime. The number is 615-591-5262. We have people taking calls Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We'd be glad to speak with you. And if you just want more information, or if you have a family member or a loved one who wants to talk to someone who's struggling and just can't quite seem to get their feet under them right now, that's why we're here. And we'd be honored to work with them. So just call that number. For our website, that's a great resource of information and how to contact us. Information on Live Intentionally is at the website, so if people want to sign up, they can do all that right there. But just want to thank you for giving us a chance to take a few minutes here with you this morning, and just ask and hope that you'll all be able to care for yourself and the people you love right now in a really good way. And we'll get through this, and we're going to learn a lot in the process, and we all are. And but we'll land on our feet by the grace of God. We look forward to that, but we'll get through it. So we'll get through it together. Thank you, Brian, for having us and for everyone participating.
Yeah, thank you all for being here this morning. Obviously, a super timely topic, and all of us are feeling some stress and anxiety in different levels. And just appreciate you all with your knowledge, but also some of the resources that you referenced. And we'll send out the link to everybody about Live Intentionally. That's coming up in April. And there it is right there. Some information about that. Make sure that you can sign up for that. Again, it's free. It's a virtual event. It's a great resource for you. As some of the things that they all referenced as well, resources. Brene Brown is great. There's, like I said, the book that I read is Voice of the Heart by Chip Dodd. That's another great resource. I think, kind of the theme that I hear from all of you is just kind of try to do what you can do to get some good input into your life. There's so much negative stuff coming at us and so much scary stuff coming at us, but as much as we can do to control what's coming into ourselves is really important, and taking, self-care, especially at this time, is important. So, like, again, I'd like to thank you all for attending our first virtual First Friday, and appreciate all of your feedback and questions and things throughout this. Thank you to our panel. This was just excellent and timely. And again, for all of you that are out there, we'll also post this online, so you can share it with friends or family that you feel like need this. But also, again, if you have questions or need further assistance, definitely reach out to the Refuge Center for Counseling. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.